Okay, welcome to Author Talk on CBSNews.com. We are joined now by Ben Mezrich, author of Sex on the Moon. And we should clarify, it's not actually sex on the moon itself. Though I guess maybe not too
it's
far
similar,
away,
yeah.
in
Sex
a way.
on moon rocks. Yeah,
we'll explain more about that in a moment. Ben, it's really good to have you here.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Ben, as you know, wrote The Accidental Billionaires and also Taking Down the House. Many of our viewers may be familiar with those.
Bringing Down the House, yeah. Bringing Down the House with the MIT kids who took Vegas, and then Accidental Billionaires, which became The Social Network. So.
Yep.
My titles always get changed, but people know the project.
You kind of made a name for yourself writing these stories of guys who beat the system.
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
Like genius kids who kind of do something crazy and become rock stars along the way. That's kind of my beat. Yeah.
And this is a bit about what Sex on the Moon is about too.
Yeah, it's a brilliant kid he crosses that line though. This is a kid who was a genius who just did something really stupid because he fell in love. It's a crazy story. It's kind of the most wild story that I think I've ever found.
So his name is Thad Roberts. First of all, I'm curious, how you find some of these stories these days, because people now reach out to you, right?
Yeah, I've become like the go-to guy for every college kid who commits a crime or does something wild. And mutual friends, Thad Roberts had just gotten out of prison, and his friends called me up because they loved my books and they thought this would be a great story for me. And this is a kid who literally was at NASA. He was on his way to becoming an astronaut, and he falls in love with a girl, and to impress her, he steals a 600-pound safe full of moon rocks from every moon landing in history, and he spreads some of them on a bed and has sex with his girlfriend on them and then tries to sell them over the internet. One
of the most unusual crimes or thefts in U.S. or world history.
It really is. And it was completely covered up, so nobody knew this story because NASA was embarrassed by it. They didn't want anybody to know about, one of their own had robbed them. But it's just wild. I mean, it's all about kind of how crazy NASA is and all the cool stuff that went on there. And then this kid who just, does something bad and regrets it, but it's one of those Ocean's 11 heists when he does it.
Yeah, you made some comparisons to Ocean's 11, and by the way, it's been you've sold it now. The book's going to be a movie.
I sold it to the same people who made The Social Network. So it's the same producers, Kevin Spacey and Scott Rudin and Dana Bernetti and Mike DeLuca, and it's the same studio. So it's going to be a big movie, and they're working on it now. They know they've got a director, Will Gluck, who did the Justin Timberlake Mila Kunis movie that just came out.
Did you see it?
I didn't see it yet, but I heard it's great.
Yeah, my wife saw it. She said good things about it. So Thad Roberts, you talk a little bit about why he did this, and you say he didn't do it for money. He didn't do it for power?
Well, he did. There was a little money. Let's just say there was some greed involved, but it wasn't like he stole it to make millions of dollars, even though a single gram of moon rocks was once offered for $5 million. And he stole this huge safe, which had a whole bunch in it. He just tried to get $100,000, but really he was trying to be this James Bond kind of guy. He even had the James Bond theme song playing in his head when he did it. He needed to be loved. He needed to feel cool. And I always write about these geeky guys who can't get laid. And this is a geeky guy who actually didn't have any trouble getting laid, but the problem was he just never felt important, and he wanted to be important.
And that's why it's a big reason why he did this.
Yeah, I mean, to impress his girlfriend. And we've all done stupid things to impress girls, but I think what he did really takes the cake.
Probably. So $5 million once was offered for a gram of moon rock.
Right.
So then, kind of working that out,
well,
he stole 17 pounds worth.
No, he only stole 100 grams. So there was a 17-pound safe that he was thinking about robbing. He ended up stealing a safe from his boss's office, which was a huge safe, but only had 100 grams. But what was interesting was it was a piece of the moon from every single moon landing in history. So as a collection, it's invaluable. And then there was also a little piece of Mars in there, too. So, he stole a pretty valuable thing.
How did they find him?
Well, for 48 hours, they didn't even notice the safe was missing. And then eventually, what happened was he went on the internet and basically said, does anybody want to buy a moon rock? And this mineral collector named Axel Emmerman in Antwerp, Belgium, responded, but also then emailed the FBI and said, I think there's something going on. So the FBI got involved and slowly created this big sting operation, and Thad didn't realize he was emailing with the FBI. And so they set up this huge operation in Orlando, Florida, and they took him down in a restaurant, and everyone in the restaurant was an FBI agent. And Thad remembers walking in and looking around and realizing everyone's like 30 to 40 years old. But it doesn't dawn on him that's because every person there was an FBI agent. And they took him down in a parking lot, and he went to jail.
he thought he might get, what, a year or two in prison, and he got
7.5 years. So he thought it was like a college prank. He knew he was going to get in trouble, but he didn't know it would be like that. But NASA took it very seriously. He had stolen a safe from his professor's office, and Gibson, this brilliant, eminent scientist, had his life's work in the safe as well. All of these notebooks, he says that had all of he'd been doing for the past 30 years, and those notebooks were never found. Thad says there were no notebooks. He never remembered seeing any notebooks. But NASA and the courts, sided with Gibson, and he went to jail for a long time.
What did you make of Thad?
He's a very complex guy. I mean, I spent a year trying to get to know him, and he's very smart. He's extremely nice and likable, but he did something, bad, and he did it in a way that was hard to understand, because the heist itself was very elaborate. It took a lot of genius to pull off, and then he tries to sell them over the internet, which pretty much anybody knows you're going to get caught. So he's not a bad guy, but I do think he's a little bit delusional, and I think he kind of puts himself in these positions where he needs to prove something. It comes from his background. He grew up in a very hardcore Mormon family. He was kicked out of his house for having premarital sex when he was 18. And so he never really had that family, love, or that family background, and I think he wasn't very grounded.
What's he doing now?
He wants still to go to space. He got out of prison. He's getting his PhD, and so he's a smart guy, but he's not going to give up. He's hoping to get hired one day, and I don't know. He's one of those guys who needs to control his instincts sometimes, but he is smart, so hopefully he'll pull himself together.
Who's going to play him in the movie?
I don't know who's going to play him in the movie. I would love to see. It's got to be like a young guy who can be really cool and athletic, but also work at NASA. So it's kind of an interesting, character. I think a Justin Timberlake would be awesome. Someone like that. Rob Pattinson would be really cool. I have my, favorites, but I'm the author, so I have no control. The author is about equal to the caterer.
You just let go of it once you sell to the studio.
Yeah.
By the way, the girlfriend. What happened to the girlfriend that he did all this for?
So she dumped him when he went to prison. He
Nice.
wrote a letter to her every day from jail, and then when he comes back to his cell 3 years into his sentence, he finds them all unopened on his bed. Her dad wouldn't let her talk to him anymore, and she's moved on with her life and didn't want to have anything to do with him.
All right. Ben Mezrich, author of Sex on the Moon. It's a very cool read.
Thank you.
Check it out if you get a second. We appreciate you stopping by.
Hey, I appreciate it too, and I think it's my best title. You can't beat Sex on the Moon.
No, wait, and by the way, you said the movie may be named this as well?
I think so. My wife came up with the title, not me. This is the first title that she's come up with, so she's the dirty mind behind Sex on the Moon, but I can't imagine they would change this title. They've changed all my other titles.
That's what I was going to say. They've changed all your other titles.
Yeah, 21 was Bringing Down the House, and Social Network was Accidental Billionaire, so I'm hoping Sex on the Moon stays Sex on the Moon.
Well, in the meantime, there's a book called Sex on the Moon. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks
It's
very
fun.
much,
Yeah, great seeing you.
Good to see you, man. You've been watching CBSNews.com and Author Talk.